Greetings, my friends. This is Celeria Rosencroix, and in this episode of the Chronological Quran, Episode 2, we shall be investigating Ayat 1 through 5 of Surah 96. These are the words which Jibreel the angel is supposed to have delivered to Muhammad in the cave before he ran back home to his wife. In order to make it easy to see exactly what I'm talking about and to allow for other images to be observed most readily while I'm making my arguments and commentary over these scriptures, I have created a document which I shall be sharing with all who watch this and the subsequent videos. It will essentially be something along the lines of a script for these episodes. However, it will also, I think, be a very useful resource for anyone who's wanting to properly look through the Quran in chronological order on their own time. Hopefully, it will be a very useful piece of media to analyze and digest in the future. So, let us proceed now to Tafsir al-Abis. Thus begins Surah 96, The Clot. Read, O Prophet, in the name of your Lord who created. Here Muhammad is commanded to read despite the fact that he cannot read, and he has told this to the spirit that is tormenting his body twice already. Here, the one who would later be called Jibreel first manages to deliver ayat to him. The words following the initial command, read, are very close to Bismillah, but are not quite. Bi-izmi Rabbika. Commentary from Maududi suggests that calling him your Lord here implies Muhammad already acknowledged Allah. But I would argue that this does not necessarily follow. By saying your Lord who created, however, given Muhammad was probably already at least somewhat exposed to Christianity and Judaism, even if it is not to the degree that he knows much about them, he likely would know enough to at least recognize who the words of the Spirit were referring to. Whether or not said Spirit is being honest in saying that it serves the Creator and was calling Muhammad to do the same. In Ayat 2, Jibreel, or Allah through him, claims that Allah created humans from a clinging clot, or from congealed blood. Now, it should be understood that this is not saying that humanity as a whole was created from a bloody lump. Certainly, it is not saying that Adam was made in such a way either. This, rather, is an explanation of where individuals come from, and a false scientific claim about the development of individuals in the womb after fertilization has occurred. As anyone with knowledge of embryonic development, or hopefully a modicum of sexual education would be able to tell you, after two gametes, the sperm and the egg, meet, forming a new type of cell, the zygote, this zygote begins to undergo a specialized form of mitosis known as cleavage, forming a complex internal structure in preparation for eventually implanting itself in the uterine wall, where it would begin to receive nutrients and oxygen from the prospective mother over the course of its development. At no point during this process does the blood actually pass from the mother to the child, however, and no clotting in the mother occurs. No blood is actually present within the fetus either until 3 weeks after the initial development, in fact. As such, Allah is either intentionally lying to Muhammad and all of his followers through Jibreel, or he is an ignorant fool. It is also the case that trying to salvage this by saying what is meant is that fetuses look like leeches in the early stage of development is not practical. 1 month to 5 weeks developed fetuses are too lumpy and defined in shape for it to make sense to describe them in this way. The final option that you have available is for one to take this as Allah insulting humanity by suggesting that humans are like leeches while developing in the womb, or alternatively to say that he's meaning we are just lumps of flesh and blood that aren't proper creatures until after we are born. Both of these options come across as insulting humanity in a broad sense, and I don't think that Allah is making a pro-choice political stance here. Although I guess you can feel free to go with that if that is your desire. Here are some diagrams if the paragraphs above confused you. Egg, fertilized, cleavage, compaction, differentiation, cavitation, laminar disc formulation, cell mass differentiation, implantation, zone hatching, mesoderm formation, mesoderm spreading, amniotic sac enlargement. And here are the stages of development visually displayed for your ease. As you can see, no leech stage. We move on to Ayat III. Not much to really talk about here. It says simply, read and your Lord is most generous. I guess you could say that this is the first case that Allah is ending an ayat by complimenting himself and or providing a name, but not much else because it has to continue in number 4. Who taught by the pen? This seems to attribute not only spoken language but written language to Allah. This is not something that even Christians or Jews who take the extreme stance that Adam and Eve gained the ability to write via eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil might claim. It indicates that Allah kick-started human civilization and put us in a position to directly dominate the natural world, which goes beyond what can actually be inferred from the Genesis account having Adam and Eve's direct children doing farming and raising domesticated animals, rather than there being a longer hunter-gatherer stage that they had to struggle with. This is a great big can of worms, which I won't be opening right now, though. Suffice to say, Islam is making a huge claim here, and one is forced to wonder why, if Allah did in fact teach writing, he decided to wait a couple thousand years at least before doing so, given it was definitely not the case that civilization immediately started with writing as a tool at its disposal. Finally, Ayat 5 ends with, taught humanity what they knew not. This is the last of the verses from the first revelation of the Quran. Jibreel did not immediately reveal everything in that cave after all. Muhammad ran off after receiving the first 5 verses of this surah, and many more verses remain afterwards. Anyway, you could say God taught humanity some things that we did not know. For example, the making of clothes, the taking care of plants, given, of course, Adam was tasked with taking care of the garden despite the level of ease the task apparently offered, and so on. Certainly, he also acted as a lawgiver from the beginning, even if the commands were few in the beginning. I would say that whether God and Allah are the same remains to be seen, and would attempt to maintain a sort of agnostic approach going forward, as I will generally attempt to do, not bringing up later ayat and surah at every step in order to connect the Quran together prematurely. But given we already have a major error which demonstrates the Allah of the Quran is not all-knowing, or at the very least is a liar, I feel it is safe to do otherwise, and to proceed in this way. We shall not make assumptions as to what Allah might be, other than said entity not being the Most High God, until evidence presents itself to give better clarity down the line. In the meantime, we shall continue to note character traits and behaviors which Allah demonstrates through the Prophet's actions and the words of the Quran. For now, that is it. I shall see you again later on episode 3 of the Chronological Quran.